plants and ecosystems tonight. Real quickly, here's some organizations that are national organizations, and they have a presence in the birding community throughout the whole United States and the world. You can see them right there for yourself. In our state, we have several organizations that do a lot for birds, and Houston Audubon and the other Audubon chapters are great. I'm trying to locate my mouse. I cannot find my mouse on this thing, and the Zoom control bar is right in the middle of my slide. I'd rather it be someplace else. Okay, I moved it. So Houston Audubon has a huge presence here. The World Birding Center in the Rio Grande Valley has a great presence there. And then we have these others along the way. So what makes birding in Texas so special? Well, one is the migration location. And two, we have what we call migrant traps, which are small, relatively small areas. That may be 4 or 5 acres or 15 or 20 acres or even 100 acres. But those areas are in thousands of acres too. But those areas are much smaller than the breeding territory. When birds get on the breeding territory, they disperse and set up territories. But when they're coming through in migration, they're concentrated in numbers and they're on a smaller piece of property. And we have large numbers of birds at any one time in a small, relatively small area. The other is just the diversity of species that we have that migrate through here in the spring. And we have a great number of birds that come down for the winter. These are what we call the Nearctic migrants. They come down from as far as the Arctic, Canada, the boreal forest of Canada, the tundra of Canada, and northern United States, and they migrate here. Some of them go all the way into Mexico, but many of them stay here, so we have that also. And then we're fortunate to be adjacent to New Mexico and Mexico. So we get species that are vagrant or rather restricted in their range, but they show up here from time to time. And there's a number of those, and we'll talk about a few of those later. So this little diagram here, which is from the Texas Parks and Wildlife, illustrates in a very general, broad, stylized form the migration routes. Along the Atlantic seaboard, we have the Atlantic Flyway. Up the Mississippi River, we have the Mississippi Flyway. And then right through Texas, more or less the heart of Texas, is the Central Flyway. Those are the green birds. And then on the left-hand side, west of the Continental Divide, is the Pacific Flyway. Now, in reality, these birds are migrating. They're not in narrowly defined paths. We get birds from the Mississippi Flyway and we get birds from the Mississippi Flyway. A little bit of overlap there. And that's part of what makes birding in Texas so wonderful, because we can get those. We even get a few birds a year from the Atlantic Flyway. So it's a little bit of everything. I thought there was another slide there. Okay, so we're talking about birds that we think of as, quote, our birds because they come to Texas or come to the United States, but really these birds travel all the way up to Alaska, Greenland, up into Arctic Ocean, all through Canada, all through the United States. When they're coming in for the spring, and in the fall, they migrate out of here. Many of them go into Mexico, Central America, and as far south as the very tip of South America. And we'll look at some of those birds that do that. And they're spread out all through South America. So these birds are making intercontinental flights twice a year. And they're not flying United, by the way. They have to do it on their own accord, fuel up, and make those flights. And we're going to look at some of those flights that are pretty staggering. So this little diagram shows that approximately 3 to 5 billion birds, that's billion with a B, birds per year leave in the fall, what's called the boreal forest region, and migrate south into Central America and South America. Now, how many of those 3.5 billion birds, how many insects do you think they've eaten on the way? Many of them are fruit eaters, but a lot of them, the majority of them are insect eaters. Even the fruit eaters eat a lot of insects during the springtime and summertime because they're raising their young. So they consume millions of pounds of insects every year. And we have an opportunity to experience this migration for those of us that are birders, but many people are not aware of it right here in Houston, and they miss it every year. So when we think about birds, of course, if you get a field guide, the field guide is divided by family of birds, which is a great way to look at birds, but you can also look at birds and group them by the way they occur or when they occur. So we have our resident birds, which are here year round. And then we have what we call the neotropical breeding birds. Neotropics means the new tropics. The old world tropics is Africa and Southeast Asia. The new tropics is Southern Mexico, Central and South America. So the neotropical breeding birds, these are the ones that come in from those areas and breed in Texas. The neotropical migratory birds are again from the Central South America, and they pass through Texas going on up into other parts of the US or Canada to breed. Then we have the Nearctic migrants. These are the wintering birds. Like we have an influx of American kestrels. We have an influx of sparrows. We have an influx of ducks and geese. So these are wintering birds, and they're from the Nearctic region, which is the northern part of the United States and Canada. And then, of course, we have the introduced non-native birds, which is the starling and the house sparrow, and a few others that are around, less common than those two. So you can look at it that way, and this will give you a season, so to speak, when to look for these birds. So being part of the native plant community, or the plant community and the native plant community, you're probably all familiar with this ecoregion map that we have here. And so you can see that we're in the coastal prairies, the Gulf Coast prairies and marshes region, the light blue right along the coast there. And, you know, actually Texas is divided into about 26 regions that are refined from this, but this is the big picture, and we'll use this. So in the far right, you see the light green, that's the East Texas, and then in the far left, you see the El Paso, which is the Trans-Pecos region, and then you see the Edwards Plateau in the light blue and the cross timbers in the yellow. Each one of these ecological regions, as you already know, are characterized by different plant communities. And it's the plant communities to a large degree that determine what type of insects are going to be there, what type of mammals are going to be there, rodents and birds. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we can't talk about all of them, we don't have enough time, but we're going to talk about a couple of the, three of the key regions, okay? And, you know, you're more familiar probably with the Gulf Coast prairies and coastal marsh region. So that's where we live. We'll start with that. So in Texas, we have a birding trail, and this is the Upper Texas Gulf Coast Birding Trail map. It's divided into different regions, and you can see that there's the Trinity Loop there up around the Woodlands area. If you look, and then you see Houston area, out to the west of the Katy Prairie Loop. If you look more or less just south to the right and lower past Houston, you'll see Texas City and Galveston. Well, there's this Texas City Loop, and then we have the Galveston Loop and the Bolivar Loop, and we have the Beaumont Loop, and we have the Anahuac Loop. So there's lots of different loops or birding trails. And in the lower right-hand corner, you can see one of the signs that's used to indicate that this is the coastal birding trail, coastal birding trail location. Now, if you see other areas that are light green or kind of an orange color and blue, those are other regions along the coast and inland that are also birding loops, but we're not going to talk about those tonight. We don't have time to talk about every one. So here's the lower coastal trail. This is actually the green part is the lower Rio Grande Valley. And if you see just above that up around the Corpus area, that's the central coastal region trail, Coastal Bend Trail. And then out west is the Laredo Trail. So it's fairly easy. You can go online and download these, and they give you directions and tell you a few birds that you're likely to see there. So it's an easy way to get involved in birding if you're interested in getting in birding. Now, once they moved out of Central Texas, we switch over from birding trails to wildlife trails, but it's essentially the same. the areas that you can go to look at wildlife are the same ones that you go to look at birds. And so this is the El Paso region, the Trans-Pecos region in light blue. Up above Lubbock is you're getting into the rolling plains of the Panhandle. Again, just another way of looking at the different ecoregions. And if you've never been to El Paso, that's Chihuahuan Desert region. So it's quite a bit different than the Piney Woods, which, by the way, the Piney Woods are the only place in Texas that you can go to see Bachman's sparrow and red cockaded woodpecker. Now, so those are two, well, the red cockaded is an endangered species, and we'll look at that in a moment, and the Bachman's is a rare and hard to find bird. But again, that's another reason to come to Texas is you can get those two birds along with many other birds that we'll look at in a moment. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions about the Texas Birding Trail or the ecosystems that we talked about?
I don't have any questions posted yet, Glenn.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we're going to start with something easy, which is the purple martin. And many people know the purple martin. Many people put up birdhouses for purple martin. We call them purple martin houses. And in the eastern United States, historically, this bird nested in like the old beech trees that had huge cavities. Beech trees would be 8-10 feet in diameter, hollow in the inside. They would nest inside there. They would nest in areas that might have cliffs or cavities along banks and mountain ledges and rocky areas and things like that. But currently, there's no known colony of purple martins that's nesting in natural cavities in the eastern United States. They all nest on in human-made or human-put erected houses like a built house or gourds. Now, in the western part of the United States, like in Arizona and further west, they still nest in, I was in Arizona last year and they were nesting in cactus. You could see them nesting in the giant saguaro cactus where the Gila woodpeckers had excavated holes and some of the purple martins would take over the old holes and nest there. So, but in the east, they're dependent upon humans. Now, many people will know about the purple martin and look forward to them coming in the spring, but they don't really know anything about their departure in the fall, and they don't know anything about where they go in the winter. So this map shows you that these birds depart the United States, and this is actually the spring migration, but if we just think of it in reverse, it's the same thing. And they spend their winter months primarily in Brazil, but some of them, you know, all through, you'll find some in Colombia and a few in Ecuador, eastern part of Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, but the majority of them are in Brazil, which is the biggest country in South America. I don't know if anyone's ever been, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend that you go and check it out. This by the end of this month, all the way through early September, you can go check out what's called the staging of purple martins, or it's called the migration roosting also. And it's located on Southwest Freeway at the Corporate Drive exit, which is that there's a large shopping center on the right there called the Fountain Shopping Center. You may know it. And you can go to Audubon's website and get the actual address, but it's 59 South, take the Corporate Drive exit. It's right there on your right. You'll see a big water fountain out there. And these purple martins on their migration out of the United States hang out there in the evenings just before dark. And out behind the shopping center, there's some drainage ditches, and so they can get water there and take a bath before they go to roost and keep their feathers in good shape. So these purple martins come here, they bathe, they rest, they just stay there. And I was down there a couple of years ago, and I estimate there was like 10,000 purple martins down there in one evening. And they're loud and they're flying all around, many of them perch, and then they go to roost, and some of them roost on the wires back in the back, some roost in the trees. But it's pretty spectacular to see that many purple martins in one place. So some of them will be coming in and they'll be staging and they'll be feeding and preening and getting ready, and some will leave and more will come in. but this goes on until about maybe the middle of September, certainly early September, from about the end of this month to early September. So try to get down there and check it out. It's well worth it.
Glenn, we had a question about bald eagles. Are you going to talk about bald eagles, and we can defer that question to then?
Not really, but I'll be happy to answer any question about bald eagles. We do have them. Many people don't know that we do have them.
Oh, so Mandolin Salazar is asking where is the best area to see them? She's not specifying if she means locally, but I'm assuming that may be the case, or if it's nationally.
Well, nationally is probably Alaska, the best place to go. But here in Houston, you can see them I've seen them in Bear Creek Park. I live up in Humble in Fall Creek, and there's a pair that nest right about a mile from me. There's a pair that nest in Pearland. There's a pair that nest in Columbia. The Woodlands. You go out in the wintertime, go out to a place called Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N Lake. And you can Google that, or you can go to the Katy Prairie Conservancy and get a map to get there. Go to Warren Lake and just spend a day out there, and you'll see a bald eagle flying around somewhere out there. But you can roam around on the Katy Prairie area and also find them.
That's where I've seen them, on the Katy Prairie pretty often.
Yeah, but I've seen them flying over Bear Creek Park also.
Nice.
So they're around. You just have to look for them. So now we're going to talk about some wintering waterfowl. These are Nearctic migrants. They're coming down for the winter, and these are snow geese. I don't see any other geese in there. But a very sought after, birders are kind of weird. I think many of them are what we call listers. They keep a list of every bird they've ever seen, and the object is to go see as many birds as you can. Now, I'm not really I do keep a list of my birds, but I don't bird that way. I like to go to regions that I've never been, that's beautiful ecoregions, and experience the environmental beauty that's there. The ecology, the ecological zone, the region that I'm in. I want to experience that and see the birds that make that region their home. But I do keep a list of the birds, but some people, they have target species. So Ross's goose is one of them. And you can see Ross's geese in other areas too. But if you go inland, like North Dakota, where you can see them, there's not as many birds there as there are on the coast of Texas. So if you're trying to get to see as many species of birds as you can in one trip, especially if you're coming from Europe or Asia, then you want to go to the state. And so Texas and California are always neck and neck as being the one or two states that have the most species of birds. Sometimes Texas has more because we get a vagrant from Mexico that comes up. Sometimes California gets one or two ahead of us because they have some pelagic bird that shows up out off the coast, or they have a bird from Mexico that shows up, and they'll be ahead for 2 or 3 years, and then something shows up in Texas and we're ahead again. So, and then Alaska's number 3, New Mexico's number 4, Oregon's number 5. So, down the road are other states. So most people that want to see a lot of birds, they want to go to the states that have the most birds. And that makes sense. So we can also see the whooping crane in Texas. It's probably the easiest place to see them, by the way. So if you want to see, and I know people who, there's an organization called the International Crane Foundation, and they make trips throughout the world to see all the cranes of the world. So I know people that want to do that. But if you want to see the whooping crane, the best place to see the whooping crane is right here. Well, it's in Texas, but it's down at Aransas National Wildlife Refuge. The other thing to keep in mind is that for birding purposes, we have what's called the American Birding Association, and they are the more or less the official gatekeeper or recognizer of a person's records of birds, and the records of birds that are accepted, approved, and recognized in the United States as being a valid species. So they're the ones that establish that and kind of monitor all that. So if you want to be on their in their game of seeing the most species in the American Birding Association's region, then Canada is not included. So you can't go to Canada to see the whooping crane. You have to come to the lower United States. Where you can see these is either in Florida or at Aransas National Wildlife Refuge, or you can see them in Wisconsin. I've actually seen them in Wisconsin, and but the easiest place is Aransas National Wildlife Refuge, and you can see they migrate from way up in the northern part of Canada, Calgary, Canada area, and spend the winter in Aransas along the coast. Radically different habitats, but many birds do that. They change habitats from breeding habitat to wintering habitat, and it's 180 degrees out. The population that's in Florida is much smaller than the population that's in migrates from Texas to Canada. So another species of crane that you can see in Texas is the sandhill crane. And there's 3 species of Texas that's been recorded in North America, and all 3 of those have been recorded in Texas. Now the one that's we've had the whooping crane, and now we're talking about the sandhill crane. The third is called the common crane, which is an Asian species of crane, and it's a vagrant. And a vagrant means it just shows up unexpectedly and without any real rhyme or reason. They never know where it's going to show up or when it's going to show up. Sometimes you see them in Alaska, and we've had them two times in West Texas out near in the panhandle of Texas. So it's possible to get those. We mentioned earlier the red cockaded woodpecker, which is a endangered species, and you can find that just north of Houston at W.G. Jones State Forest. You can find it over in East Texas also, where you might go to get the Bachman sparrow and the brown-headed nuthatch, along with many other species. But again, these people who like to bird, and I'm guilty of this, I enjoy seeing new species, just like I enjoy seeing new species of plants. So that's part of the game is, and part of the joy, part of the fun is traveling to locations, different ecoregions, and seeing the birds that live there and seeing the plants that live there. So this bird right here is one of my top 500 favorite birds. This is the red knot, and it's a shorebird, of course. We can see these birds right here, especially down in Bolivar, but you can see them in Surfside. You can see them almost anywhere along the Texas coast. In the lower right-hand corner, we see the all gray bird, dark gray on the upper part, light gray or off-white underneath. That's the winter plumage. So we have some in the wintertime here. And the very top right is breeding plumage. We don't get them in breeding plumage. They don't reach that plumage until May. And when they come through here, it's typically April. But we do see them sometimes, like they look in the lower left-hand corner, which is coming into breeding plumage. And that's usually what we see in April.
Glenn, on your red knot in winter plumage,
yeah,
that bird looks like a lot of wading birds that we see. When you see that bird, what helps you identify it as a red knot in that plumage?
Who's asking the question?
This is Mary Waters.
Okay, Mary, thank you for that question. That is a great question. And it was difficult for me to learn to identify this bird in the winter plumage. So I think a good thing to do, a good way to do it is to learn to identify the willet. The willet looks very much like this, and you're right, there's lots of other birds that look like this. So the willet is the largest shorebird that looks like this. In other words, uniformly gray on the upper part, off-white underneath. And study the willet's bill. It's much larger bill, heavier, broader bill, and a bigger head, longer neck. So this guy looks like a small willet. And some of the other birds, like especially the black-bellied plover, looks a lot like this in winter plumage. So again, looking at the bill of the black-bellied plover and the shape of the head of a plover is much more round. It's like a perfect circle. Whereas this red knot's head, although it's round, it's not a perfect circle. And the bill shape is much different. And this bird is about the same size as the black-bellied plover. And the behavior is different from a black-bellied plover. Black-bellied plovers will often stand still. Of course, willets can stand still too, so you have to wait till they move around. But the plovers walk a short distance and stop. Walk a short distance and stop. And the willet is always kind of either standing or walking. So it's the shape of the bill, it's the shape of the head, it's the shape of the body. Plovers look a little bit more plump, if I could use a technical term, and kind of more round, not as long looking as this guy. And the willet is longer legged, bigger body, bigger build, longer neck, and longer body. So it's that kind of a thing. It's the structure. But the plumage or the color of the feathers that we see on the willet and this winter plumage red knot are so close. It's unbelievable. Good question.
Thanks.
So here's one of the things that just amazes me about the red knot is their migration. Now these red knots down at the tip of South America, that's where they winter. And they make the reverse migration for spring, but they winter at the tip of South America. And when I say they winter there, probably 90%, from what I've read, 90% of the population winters way down at the tip. The other 10% winters along the coast of the southern coast of South America, about where the first arrowhead ends. There's a large refuge there. So basically most of them are at the end. So they, in preparing to migrate to North America, they move up the coast a little ways, continue to feed, fatten up, and whenever they get a good tailwind and they've gained enough weight, they launch into the air and they fly 7,000 miles nonstop. Takes them 4 nights and 5 days to get to Delaware Bay in New Jersey. Now there's a few offshoots. If you see, some of them actually stop on the northern coast of South America. Some of them detour to the Gulf of Mexico and land here in Texas, but the bulk of them do the route of straight from the southern coast of the eastern and southern coast of South America straight to Delaware Bay in New Jersey. And then they fatten up on the eggs of horseshoe crabs primarily. And then they have another 1,000 miles to go to the tundra where they breed. And when they reach the tundra, there may be still snow on the ground, not heavy snow, but patches of snow. They could still get another snow flurry or even a blizzard occasionally. So it's pretty remarkable what they do. And they make this migration in reverse in the fall. So it's amazing. Another beautiful bird that we have in migration, and occasionally we get some overwintering here too, is the American avocet. Look at the bill on this avocet. And for me, one of the most important things to look at on a bird is the bill, because that tells you what family the bird's in. It tells you how the bird feeds, what the bird typically feeds on. Once you learn to identify the bill and know what that bill signifies by way of the feeding style of the bird. The bird in the small caption, the single bird, is in breeding plumage, and we see those in April. And you can see these down at Bolivar Flats. You can see them in Galveston. And I've seen them in Galveston when there was probably somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 birds down there, which is a pretty spectacular sight. They actually breed along the west of the Rocky Mountains, up into like Montana and Wyoming and Idaho and all up into southern Canada. Buff-breasted sandpiper, this is another one of my top 500 favorite birds. This is also a long-distance migrant shorebird. And you can see at the breast of the bird is kind of a buffy color, hence the name. And we can see this is I don't know if y'all know who Jonathan Franzen is, but he's an author. He writes for National Geographic, and he oftentimes writes about birds. He went to Spain in the Middle East, and for National Geographic, he did an article about how they hunt hawks over there in migration. So he came to Houston a couple of years ago, and this was one of the birds that he wanted to see. He had 5 species, and he hired me as a guide, and I got 4 of the species he wanted to see, but we could not find the buff-breasted sandpiper. But he, later in the year, he was up in Ohio, I think, there's someplace, I forget now what state, but he was in another state and he found it, and he emailed me and said he got it. So I'm happy for him. So that's just an example of how people travel to certain areas to see specific birds. And you can see a good place to see this bird is like if all around us down in Brazos, around Richmond, Rosenberg, south of there on Highway 36, over in just kind of west of Brazos Bend State Park, there's some turf farms over there, turf grass farms. So looking on turf grass farms is a good place for these birds. There's some up in Crosby also. You can see it at Fort Travis, just on the Bolivar Peninsula also. So here's the migratory route of the buff-breasted sandpiper. So this shows different populations of birds that make this migration. And as you can see, some of them come through Texas here. They too winter along the eastern and southern coast of South America. So they make about a 6,000-mile journey. Am I the only one that's just blown away by the fact that these little birds are making this kind of a journey? Okay, brown booby, this photo by Greg Lavity, taken right out here. I mean, you know, this is a bird, you can see the range. Typically it's a coastal bird of Mexico and the Caribbean. But we get them fairly regularly. Right now, there's one in Harris County. There's one in Galveston. There's one in Austin. And there's one up in near Dallas, a brown booby. So it's, I mean, this is one of those rare oddities that shows up, and these show up pretty regularly. A good place to find this bird is down at the Baytown Nature Center, or Bolivar Flats, or Texas City Dikes, or anywhere along Galveston you can see them. These look very much in structure like our gannet or like a blue-footed booby or other boobies, but we do have northern gannets off the coast of Galveston and Bolivar, so you can see gannets out there too. Reddish egret. There's about maybe 2,000 to no more than 3,000 nesting pairs of these birds in the whole world. And most of those, probably 65 to 70% of those are in Texas. So if you want to see this bird, this is where you come. I had a guy from, he was from England, and he had spent 35 years in the diplomatic corps for the United Kingdom and had gone to work for the British Petroleum Company. This was like about 5 or 6 years ago. And he came to Texas for a BP on meeting and hired me to take him out for 3 days. And he had seen every egret species in the world except for the reddish egret, because he hadn't been to Texas to bird. And we were able to get both the, what we call the traditional or classic form, which is the one that has the reddish head and neck and the pink bill with the dark tip. That's the classic form. We got that one for him. We saw that bird. We also saw the white morph. So the white morph is in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. There's 2 white birds. One of them has a solid black bill with yellow in front of its eye. That's a snowy egret. And the other bird is a white, we call it the white morph or the reddish egret. You can see it still has like a pinkish bill. The base of the bill is pink, kind of a pinkish color, and the tip is black, but the bird's white. So we got both of those for him that day. That was amazing. So you can see these by going to Galveston or Bolivar Flats, or sometimes you can get them over at Texas City Dike. And you'll be seeing a pretty rare bird. I mean, there's only about 6,000 of these in the world. Now, to me, this should be our state bird, but the mockingbird is our state bird. This is Oklahoma state bird. This is a scissor-tail flycatcher. It's just such a gorgeous and spectacular bird. I love this bird. They come here in the spring. They breed, most of them breed in Texas, but few of them breed in Oklahoma and southern Oklahoma, and some breed in the northern part of northwestern part of Louisiana, and some breed in eastern part of Louisiana, but I mean, New Mexico. But the vast majority of breed in Texas. And I met a guy several years ago who was from Mexico. He was an ornithologist from Mexico up here working with the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and they were studying scissor-tail flycatchers. And they were tagging these birds and doing DNA studies and all like that. And they determined that most of the birds of the scissor-tail flycatchers that we have in Texas, they winter in Guatemala. So they migrate from Guatemala to Texas and breed. If you haven't seen this bird, now's a good time to get out and look for them. In September, they also congregate in large groups. I saw a group one time of about 300, and they stage and migrate south. But September is another good month to see them because there'll be good numbers of them coming in from all regions to head further south. And the flycatchers, by the way, this is the largest group of birds in the world, largest family of birds, flycatchers. You might be surprised to know what the second largest group of birds in the world are, and that's hummingbirds. Brown pelican. Now you can see brown pelican in many places, but I just wanted to include this bird here because it was extirpated from Texas in the 60s and 70s because of DDT. But when we stopped using DDT in excess and stopped it altogether, these birds were able to migrate back into Texas and reestablish colonies. So it's something to be grateful for, and it's something to recognize that if we take the proper actions, we can help birds in many ways. And this is one of the birds that we helped. We also helped the peregrine falcon in the same way.
Hey, Glenn, we
Yeah.
had a question from Shannon Westview, and she was asking, you made a comment about the scissor-tail flycatcher congregating in large numbers prior to the migration, and she's asking where they congregate.
Yeah, so the best place to go see them would be like any place that you have large grassland areas. Out on the Katy Prairie, Atwater's Wildlife Refuge, Brazoria National Wildlife Refuge, any along 2004 where you can drive and there's big, large open grassland areas, that's the place to go. Down around Surfside, so I've seen not 300, but I've seen probably 40 or 50 of them. If you know where the Neotropical Bird Sanctuary is, there's a road that drives along there, and it's also Bryan Beach area. It's right on the coast. So they will congregate along there. I've only seen 30 or 40 of them there at one time, but that's still pretty nice. But you go out to Katy Prairie or Atwater's Wildlife Refuge, even not so much Brazos Bend itself, but some of those back roads just before you get into Brazos Bend, you can drive those back roads that go along ranch and farmland out there. You can see them out there. Corpus Christi, you can go to Corpus Christi and see them down that way.
Thank you, Glenn.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'll tell you, it makes doing a program so much more rewarding and joyful for me if people ask questions. So I appreciate the questions. Black Burning Warbler. This is a beautiful warbler. This photo does not do it justice. The orange on this is like a fire engine orange color. It's just, especially on the chin and the throat there, it's just far more electric than what this photo shows. But it's a beautiful bird, and you know, for some reason, people just love warblers. They're kind of like the jewels of the bird world, at least in North America. In Central and South America, more so in South America, it's the tanagers there that are the jewels of the bird world. But in North America, these warblers are the ones that are the most colorful birds that we have as a group. So Black Burning Warbler, I'll show you where, so here's the bay-breasted warbler. This is actually one of my favorite warblers. It's just such a beautiful warbler. Not so brightly colored, but just, I don't know, it's just a combination of the colors that makes it so gorgeous. This is the male. The other one was a male too. The females of most warblers have a similar pattern to the males, not as bright colored, but similar. Dull color, but similar pattern. Cerulean warbler. This is a rare bird. They do pass through here in the springtime and occasionally in the fall. Many of them, they migrate down into the northern part of South America, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador. This is a male. They breed, and some breed in the Appalachian Mountains, and some breed up around Ohio and Michigan, Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Glenn, we've got a question from Christy Huffman
Yep.
asking about generally, what is the habitat for warblers?
Well, warblers, they can occupy all kinds of habitat. Okay, like the Lucy's warbler is in New Mexico and Arizona, but the warblers that we're likely to see, let me put it that way, the warblers that we're likely to see, the ones that people come to Texas to see, they like wooded areas, like live oak trees, mixed deciduous trees. So you have live oaks, you may have some sweet gum, you may have some magnolia trees. You may, of course, you have yopons everywhere. So it's a mix of trees. And we have warblers that feed on the ground, like ovenbirds and Swainson's warbler. Swainson's warbler was another one of the warblers that Jonathan Franzen wanted to see. So they use a multitude of habitats. And there's even warblers that live in the desert. But for the warblers that we look for coming through here, you're going to look for them in the oak trees. That's the biggest thing. Go wherever there's oak trees. Now you can see them in other trees too, but wherever there's oak trees, there's going to be some warblers if they're here at all. You know, so you can go to Brazos Bend and see them down there in Brazos Bend. You could go to High Island and see them in High Island. But anywhere where there's live oaks or willow oaks or water oaks or sweet gum or magnolia trees or any kind of a tree or a large shrub, that's where you're going to find the warblers. Now, there's a few warblers like the palm warbler. You can find those in grassy, shrubby areas. That's their kind of habitat. But the majority of the warblers that people come to see, they're going to be in woodland. A good place that's close to Houston to see these warblers in spring migration or fall migration. Fall migration for the warblers is primarily in September and early October. So they're going to be coming through. You can have a really good day over at Edith Moore Sanctuary, Houston Auburn property, which is near Beltway 8 and I-10 kind of. You know, so you can see them in Bear Creek Park. You could see them in any place where there's woodland trees. You can see them. And now they're more concentrated in the springtime than they are in the fall, so it's easier to see them in the spring.
And Glenn, Ethan Coldell is asking, on these little long-range migrating birds, what's their lifespan? How long do they live?
Yeah, typically in the wild, about 5 years. Yeah, about 5 years. You know, so anywhere from 3 to 7 years, but on average about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is these little birds, they're small. They're only typically around 4.5 inches to maybe a few of them are larger. They're 5.5, but most of them around 4.5 inches. And they don't weigh that much. I mean, you could mail one in a first class stamped envelope. That's how little they weigh. They look like they would weigh more, but their feathers are so light, their bones are super tiny, and they're not hollow like a straw, but they have like a sponge-like structure to them, and they do have large cavities in the bones themselves. So everything's super light on these birds, and so I mean they weigh about 1 to 3/4 to 1.5 ounces, depending on which warbler you're talking about. We do have some that is a little bit larger than others, like the ovenbird's a little bit larger. The yellow-breasted chat is the largest warbler that we have, but it's soon going to be removed from the warblers altogether based on DNA studies. But most of them are around 4.5 inches long to 5.5 inches long, 3/4 of an ounce to 1.5 ounce in weight. Good question. The boreal forest of Canada, South America. That's why it's important for us to maintain those 10 ecological zones that we talked about, to keep those in good shape, to keep native plants there, native grasses, native prairies. Painted bunting. This is, again, people that come from other states that don't have them. Again, their breeding area is similar to the scissor-tail flycatcher. This is one of the birds that they really want to see. People come from other countries. They really want to see this bird. Spectacular. It looks like it would be a bird of the tropics. And it is, because that's where it winters. Roasted grosbeak, this is a stunning bird. You can find easily at High Island in the mulberry trees. They're a fruit eater, but you can see them in other places. If you can find a mulberry tree, no matter where, you'll find these rose-breasted grosbeak in spring and fall migration. Black-capped vireo, again, this is one of those rare specialty birds. You can see on the map in central Texas, up into Oklahoma is where it breeds, but most of them breed in central Texas. Again, they spend the winter down in Mexico, but if you want to count this bird on your American Birding Association's life list, you have to see it in Texas or Oklahoma. So that's another reason Texas is one of the top 50 places to go birding before you die, and that's another reason it's a great place to go birding. Is everybody still there?
Yep.
Okay, good. It just seemed more quiet for something. Another bird of Central Texas, and only in Central Texas as far as the ABA is concerned, is the golden cheek warbler. So if you want to see this golden cheek warbler in the American Birding Association's territory and count it as a bird seen for your life list, you have to come to Texas. Because if you sit in Mexico, it's not going to count on your life list for the ABA. It'll count on your own personal life list. So I have a life list for birds. I have a life list for plants, and I have a life list of really great meals that I've eaten also. So there's some value in keeping a list, I think. So these are all different kinds of orioles. And what's unique about this, now I'm not including the Baltimore oriole, which is also a possible oriole to see here in Texas. These are orioles that you can only see in Texas and count them on your American Birding Association's life list. But even if you want to see them, if you're not counting the American Birding Association's life list and you want to see them, say you're coming from Europe somewhere, Mexico is a great place to bird, but it's so unsafe. A lot of people don't want to go there. So you can still pick up these birds, the Altamira oriole, the Scots oriole, Audubon's oriole, and hooded oriole by coming to, this is the Altamira oriole's habitat right here, range, but the other orioles are still along the Rio Grande River, or the border between Mexico and Texas, going west, all the way out to like in Big Bend area where you get the Scots oriole, El Paso, you get the Scots oriole. So all along the Texas-Mexico border is where you're going to find all of these different orioles. LeConte sparrow, I love sparrows. This is a beautiful, beautiful little sparrow. And sparrows are, they have kind of cone-shaped bills. They're quite secretive, hard to get out of the grass or the shrubs or the whatever they're in, the marsh. And it's just a real challenge to get a good look at one. And this is a shot by Greg Lavity, which is a great photo. So here's the range of LeConte sparrow. You can see that they breed in the boreal forest of Canada all the way up into the tundra region of Canada. And they spend winter anywhere from Louisiana, Alabama, and Texas. So if you're going to be in Texas, this is another one of the Nearctic migrants. You might want to see this bird. And I've had people come here looking specifically for sparrows.
Glenn, I'm remembering that we have 12 species of sparrows that winter on the Katy Prairie. Does that sound right?
Actually, you could probably, that's probably on a regular basis. I've actually seen 17 species out there, and there's 19, that's over 25 years now. Some of them are very rare and just they're vagrant, okay? and there in Texas, there's a total typically of around 19 that you can get in any given year. I mean, in the central part, there's other sparrows in the west part of Texas too. So another great sparrow is Harris's sparrow. And my first Harris's sparrow I saw, I don't know, probably 25 years ago, was over on Barker Cypress Road in a big field that was just a grassy field there, remnants, pieces of probably fragmented prairie. But now there's a huge subdivision there. I mean, this is probably, I would probably guess it was around 75-acre plot that was there, grassland at that time, 25 or so years ago. And now it's a big subdivision. So you can't go there to find Harris's sparrow. But one year I was out on the Katy Prairie, and you can see that they do migrate down this way and spend the winter here. And I saw a flock of them. There must have been 75 to 100 Harris's sparrows out there on the Katy Prairie in one large flock.
Wow.
Now that was spectacular, and I've not seen it since, but it was one once in a lifetime experience, I suspect. One of the reasons I love sparrows is because they're like a watercolor to me. Warblers are like acrylic painting or oil paintings. They're bright, vibrant, colorful. And sparrows are like watercolor paintings. They're so subtle and soft and subdued, but still beautiful. So this is the olive sparrow. And look where you can only see this bird in the American Birding Association's territory, which is South Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Another colorful bird of South Texas. Now these have started moving a little bit further north. You can actually see them now up around Corpus Christi, out in a park just west of Corpus Christi called Hazel Bazemore County Park. And if you Google Texas Coastal Birding Trail, Central Coast, you'll find the directions for that place. But this is the green jay. It's in the family of jays, of course, Corvid family, I mean. Yeah, I got the COVID on my mind here. So corvid, C-O-R-V-I-D, which is the crows and jays. So this is a green jay, beautiful bird. And again, it's like a bird that you'd see in the tropics. And of course, the Rio Grande Valley historically was part of a subtropical region, and it's no longer this. There are bits and pieces of what's called the Tamaulipan thorn scrub, remnant pieces still there. And we're talking about the region of northern Mexico called Tamaulipas, which is an ecoregion like we have our ecoregions. That's an ecoregion in Mexico. And it actually extended up into southern part of Texas, the Rio Grande Valley. But of course, we've cleared that in the last, primarily since the end of World War II, put in agricultural fields, citrus farms, and things like that. So most of the Tamaulipan thorn scrub is missing and gone there, but there's still a few little bits and pieces of it there and remnants of it there. But that's why we have these species that are typical Mexican species up there, because ecologically, that part of Texas is really part of Mexico, ecologically speaking. And the birds, they don't know that they're in the United States. So they just know they're in the right habitat. Another interesting bird is the plain chachalaca. If you know anything about guinea fowl, how noisy guinea fowl are, these are kind of like guinea fowl. I was camping out about 35 years ago down in Benson State Park when you could camp there. And I got there late one evening and set up my camp just about dark. I had to use, but it was already dark. I had to use my car headlights to set up my tent. And then the next morning, much earlier than I wanted to get up, this cacophony of raucous calling started happening just around daylight. And it was these plain chachalacas. There was a flock of them, about 50 of them. And they were all talking to one another. And they're just really noisy. This is the only species of chachalaca in the United States. There's other species of chachalaca in Central America, but this is the only one that goes as far north. And again, It's because of the ecological region there, that Tamaulipas thorn scrub, which is tropical, not temperate like most of the United States is more temperate. And this is my favorite dove. This is the white-tipped dove. The very tip of the tail, outer tail feathers are tipped white. So that's how it got its name. So you look at the range, again, South Texas is where you got to go to see this bird. There's 4 species of kingfisher that occur in North America being the United States, Canada, and Alaska. And you can see all 4 species of them in Texas. 3 of them are fairly common if you go to the right habitat. The belted kingfisher, which we can see around here, and I don't have it shown. And the one that's on the top screen with the gray head and all rufous reddish brown breast is the ringed kingfisher. And you see that, you can see that over around Concan, Texas, and south down to the Rio Grande Valley. And then the green kingfisher, which is a very small kingfisher, that's on the lower right-hand corner of the screen. It's kind of a greenish color with a reddish brown band across the breast. You can see that around Concan and south central Texas all the way to the valley. The bird on the lower left is the Amazon kingfisher. That's a vagrant, it's rare. It occurs in Mexico and Central America, and it's shown up in Texas, again, South Texas, several times. So you wouldn't rely on seeing it there, but it is possible to see it there. Again, just one of the things that makes birding in Texas so amazing. Now, these 2 birds are fairly common in the right habitat. The bird on my left, I hope that's the same left that you have, with the black crest is the black-crested titmouse. Years ago, this bird was split from the tufted titmouse. We have the tufted titmouse around here, which you could see at Edith Moore Sanctuary, Bear Creek Park, and other places where there's woodland habitat. And the black-crested titmouse is more of a central, like Austin, San Antonio, and all the way down into the valley, central Texas. And the little bird on the right, or the one that without the black crest and uniformly kind of a gray color with some yellow streaking in it that has somewhat of a crest to it, that's the northern beardless pterangulet. So you can only see that bird in the American Birding Association's birding territory in South Texas, just like so many of these other birds I've been talking about. So as soon as this coronavirus is over with and people can travel, I hope a bunch of you will take a trip down to Bolivar Flats to look at birds and High Island to see birds and go down to the valley to see birds. This bird is just utterly astounding, I think. This is the common paraki. This bird's in the nighthawk family. We have the common nighthawk around here. A good place to see the common nighthawk is go to any ball field, of course, or even we don't have many people playing ball now, so I would say go to a shopping center where they have big lights in the shopping center and listen for them overhead. If you go just before dark, you might even see some. On a cloudy day, late in the evening, like 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock, up until dark, you can see these birds flying around there. I hear them in our neighborhood and see them in our neighborhood. Not the common paraki, but the common nighthawk. We don't have the common paraki here, but this is 2 shots of the common paraki. I shot these down at the Rio Grande Valley, Estrellana Grande State Park, and one of them is a distant photo. The top photo is the bird is farther away from us, so it shows you how it camouflaged the bird is on the ground, and the other one's a close-up of the same bird.
Hey, Glenn, we've got a question
Sure.
from Tiffany about, you haven't talked a lot about predators, but she's asking about if you're keeping domestic fowl, how you would, if you had any tips about predator-friendly or coexisting with predatory birds.
Well, yeah, there's a couple things that, number one, I would just hope that you would appreciate and respect that these predator birds, we call them raptors, they're only doing what they are designed to do. They're only doing what they know to do, and that is to look for birds that are not paying close attention, that are easy prey. They don't know necessarily that, oh, that's a domestic bird and somebody owns that bird and I shouldn't go after that bird. So just respect that they're not being vindictive or malicious. They're only doing what they naturally do. So a couple things that you can do is, number one, you can actually build a shelter over your backyard, a section of your backyard. I wouldn't necessarily say the whole backyard. They make a netting. It's made out of like a polypropylene material, like a plastic kind of material. It's polypropylene is what it is. And you can make a netting. They make a netting material, so you can easily put a netting material over a corner of your backyard, and it's almost invisible. I mean, it would be hard to see it if you're 50 feet away. Now the birds are going to fly into it. It's not going to kill them, and they'll probably get out of it. If they don't get out, then you can help them get out. But I would not get the one that has a small netting material, the small meshes. I'd get one that has larger meshes, like about like 1 inch square or something. That will be easier for the birds to get out of, and that way you can let your domesticated fowl roam around in that little cage that you built, and they'll be protected from the predators. Other than that, there's not much you can do. I mean, you could put up streamers, like some kind of a mylar material or other kind of plastic around your yard where it's going to be streaming, and that might keep some of them away for a while, and things like that. You can use noises. If you had some kind of recording that you set out there on a regular basis and just made it sound like a bang and it goes off, that might work for a while, but after a while they're going to get acclimated to that. Clay-colored robin on the top. It's a member of the thrush family, like our American robin is. And then on the bottom is the long-billed thrasher, which is a relative of our brown thrasher. We get the brown thrasher up here, but we don't get the long-billed unless it's a vagrant. And, oh, I'm sorry, I thought I had a map that's showing you where these birds occur. But these birds occur in South Texas. Again, Rio Grande Valley, that's where these two birds occur. And the clay-colored robin is the national bird of Costa Rica, by the way. So if you want to see these birds in the American Birding Association's range, you have to go to South Texas. Peregrine falcon. This is a stunningly beautiful bird. It's amazing how gorgeous this bird is. And they haven't been around in recent years, but there used to be a pair that would hang out downtown Houston on different buildings down there and feed on grackles and pigeons during the wintertime. And sometimes they'd move over to the medical center. Sometimes they'd move over to the American General building over off of Waugh and Allen Parkway. So there's no place that I could tell you I can say Padre Island, North Padre Island, just out of Corpus Christi, is probably the best place, the most reliable place to go see them in the wintertime. If you want to see them on a reliable basis, Idaho is probably the best place to see them any time of the year, Idaho. But in Texas, the North Padre Island National Seashore is a really good place to see them. That's the most reliable place. But you can see them anywhere around Houston. They're around in the wintertime, usually arriving in November and leaving by the end of April. You see this bird in the lower left with the wings folded going down. That's called a dive, or also called a stoop. And the way these birds hunt, I mean, these are such regal, majestic hunters, is unbelievable. They'll go high in the air and fly, and they're looking for birds underneath them. And then they go into this dive like this, the stoop, and they're going after like a flock of birds, say, or one single bird that's flying. If it's a flock, they're going to pick an outlying bird. And if it's a single bird, they're going to focus on that one single bird. So they'll start from high up and then just start diving down after this bird. And then they'll just have their talons balled up like a fist and hit the bird with their talons at a glancing angle. And that, of course, knocks the bird out of flight mode. And then they turn around real sharp and grab the bird. You can go Google National Geographic Peregrine falcon and find this guy that was doing some work with peregrine falcons. He's also a parachutist, And so they had a trained peregrine falcon. They took the peregrine falcon up to 15,000 feet elevation, and they released it. Now, trained falcons are trained to go after a toy that they have, or a piece of a leather bag. It's like a little leather ball that they use, and they drop the leather ball, and the falcon thinks of it as a prey, and they go after it and retrieve it. So they released this leather ball, released the falcon, and they had another plane with radar calculating on the falcon to see how fast it would go. Anybody know how fast this falcon was clocked at?
No.
What would you guess?
100 miles an hour.
Good guess. 242 miles an hour.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's outrageous. 242 miles an hour. So they figured that when this bird pulls out of the dive, it's doing 20 G's. So the Air Force, from what I've read, is studying the falcon because astronauts undergo 9 to 10 G's and they almost pass out. They have to use pressurized suits to prevent passing out. But this falcon pulls 20 G's and doesn't pass out. How does he do that?
Wow.
And I don't know if you can see, but up in the nostril of that feather of that one bird, the yellow above the bill, that nostril is called a cere, C-E-R-E. There's a little structure inside that nostril, and that helps redirect the airflow coming through, so it's not like a blast of air coming into the nostrils all the time. And they actually learned to put those little blades in the jet engines now to help redirect the air that comes into jet engines. So they're still studying these birds to figure out how they can improve their fighter aircraft. So again, 2 birds were radio tagged on on North Padre Island. On North Padre Island, one on south. And this just shows you where they ranged. So look where the one in the red ranged. It's all over. I mean, went over to Greenland. From Texas, it went up to the Canadian border, then across to Greenland, and then back along the Atlantic seaboard, and then into the Yucatan Peninsula, and then back into South America.
Wow.
And the peregrine comes from Latin, which means to wander. So this bird was really wandering around. Another great bird that we have here is the white-tailed kite. Kites have long, narrow wings. They're one of the raptors. This bird feeds primarily, which the peregrine falcon feeds primarily on shorebirds, but it also eats ducks and other birds. This bird feeds on mostly cotton rat out in the marshes, in the coastal marshes and coastal prairies. It used to be called a black-shouldered kite. And if you want to see this bird, you either go in the American Birding Association's range, you go to Texas, California, or Oregon, or South Florida. So again, another reason to come to Texas and go birding. The white-tailed hawk, this is probably my favorite hawk. This and the Swainson's hawk, they're both my favorite hawks. It's just such a gorgeous bird. You can see here, these photos by Greg Lavity are just stunning. So here's the range for the white-tailed hawk. Just along, it ranges up as far north as Galveston. I've actually seen one of them over on Bolivar Peninsula. So along the Texas coast, Bolivar Peninsula, as far north as it gets in the American Birding Association's birding range. A good place to see these would be the Katy Prairie or Aransas National Wildlife Refuge. I mean, you can see them also down at Brazoria or San Bernard, but that's perhaps a farther drive. Swallowtail kite. Now is a great time to be out looking for this bird. They're just now beginning to pass through in their fall migration. You can see them almost anywhere along the coast. A good place is up around between Crosby, Texas and Dayton, Texas, between Dayton, Texas and Liberty, Texas, on Highway 90 there along the Trinity River. That's a good place. I run trips up there to see them in September and October normally. I don't know if I'm going to do it this year because of the COVID, but normally I do. But anywhere you're out along the coast, you can see them at this time of year. They migrate through in the fall from mid-July through about early October. And then in the spring, they migrate through in March and April. So here's their migration. They migrate along the coast, up through Central America, South America, along the coast of Texas, and go over to basically Florida. About 65% of them breed in Florida. And then they migrate back in fall, going back into South America. I want to thank the photographers that we see listed here for the use of their photos. And I want to thank you for inviting me to talk, and thank you for your time and attention to listen. And if I can help you with any birding questions or where to go birding or what to get to birding, I offer classes through Houston Audubon on their Zoom classes right now to learn about birds. And I used to teach at Rice University, but they've stopped a lot of classes because of the virus. We plan on resuming classes in the spring. The first phase is going to be Zoom, and then depending on what situation, we'll go back to typical classes. So I'll be happy to entertain any questions now, or you can email me later. If you want to get on my email distribution list, I send out about 8 emails a year is all. So you're not going to get inundated with emails, but I send about 8 emails a year, just letting you know what classes I have coming up or what tours I'm going to be doing. I'm now working on tours for 2021. I'm just going to wait and see what happens for 20 before I do anything on that. But so I'm going to go looking right now, tentatively to go to Alaska in June of 2021, Africa in October of next year.
So Glenn, we've probably got time for just a couple questions.
Okay.
Kim asked, she said she lives in the Rio Grande Valley.
Oh, wow.
And she wants to know what she can include in her backyard habitat to possibly have some of those great birds down there visit her backyard.
Well, I really like a plant. It's a tree called Anacua. Anacua.
Uh-huh.
Anacua. That has it blooms profusely in the spring, so it attracts a lot of insects. So of course, a lot of warblers go to anything that attracts insects. And then in the fall, it produces a good number of what we call fruit, which is like a small berry, like a tiny blueberry. It's about the size of a small blueberry, and all kinds of birds eat that. Cardinals eat that, Paluxy eat that, warblers eat that, flycatchers eat that. Many species of birds eat that. And then if you can do what's called coral bean, Coralbean, coral bean, that's good for hummingbirds, and that's also good for orchard orioles and other pollinators. Hummingbirds will use that. Salvia, Salvia coccinea, that's good for hummingbirds and also some warblers. And I would just Google, I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a guy there in the valley that has a native plant nursery. And you could just Google native plant nursery, Rio Grande Valley, and find that. There's also spiny hackberry. Spiny hackberry is good. Hackberry is really great, actually. It's not just good, it's great. We have hackberries around here. Many people think it's a trash tree, but it supports 4 species of butterfly, and probably about 50 species of birds eat the fruit. And then of course there's all kinds of insects around the flowers, so that attracts warblers. So the hackberry that grows in the Rio Grande Valley is spiny hackberry, so I get that. And there's another tree that produces fruit called guajillo, Guajilla, I think, or Guajillo, guajillo. That's a good one. That's kind of like our yopon. For those of you.
That's great, Glenn. And one final question, and I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can throw an announcement up
Okay.
while you are answering this last question. So Noreen Horde is asking if you have recommend a camera recommendation for birding.
Well, I'm trying to stop sharing my screen, but oh, oops. Um, that was taking me. The problem I have is I can't see my cursor. I talked to Bob about this the other day. I can't see my cursor, so I have to kind of just keep moving around
Hanging around.
until I can get something to highlight.
Let's see. I think I might be able to stop you. Let's see. There. Okay.
Yeah,
I forced you off. Okay.
okay.
So Noreen is asking about camera recommendations.
Yeah, well, I use a Canon camera that is EOS 7D Mark II, and that's highly recommended by many, many people. That's the same camera that Kevin Carlson uses. And Kevin Carlson, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a wildlife photographer, birder, and he's written the book on shorebirds with a lot of his photos there. And he's done other books too. So that's the same camera system that he uses. But to be honest with you, if I had it to do all over again, which I bought this about 5 years ago, I guess, I would seriously look into some of these, what they call transition cameras, like a Sony A6000 or Panasonic, where they have it's a single camera and it has a zoom lens. Nikon makes one. They go anywhere from up to 600 millimeter or even up to 1200 millimeter lens. Now, and they're about the same cost as the Canon. Now, if they're not a digital SLR. They're just a transition camera, but it's like the Sony A6000. That's one of them. Panasonic makes one. If you email me, I'll send you a list of them because I've been thinking about buying one because they're a lot lighter than the Canon. Well, you know, if you get a Canon or a Nikon, you still have to buy a zoom lens. So I use the Canon 100 to 400 lens with a 1.4, what they call teleconverter. So it gives me a little bit longer range, but because a 500 millimeter lens is like $10,000. A used one is $6,000. And I just don't have that kind of money to spend. So getting good camera equipment can be expensive, but the new cameras that they have out are amazing. I mean, amazing. Mirrorless cameras are great, but they don't have the extended lens like these transitional cameras do. But so that's what I would look at those. I would look at those.
Glenn, thank you so much.
Sure.
This has just been a fantastic presentation under challenging circumstances, this Zoom business and everyone staying from home. And we really appreciate your willingness to do the presentation for us. Birding presentations are always popular with our group. Thank you very much. We really
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And I
Ben.
hope y'all get out and do some birding. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.